From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by
Vitamin energy.
The vitamins.
Energy.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! It's Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. Coming up on today's show, final thoughts before kickoff with Ira Schofel. Y'all miss Corey. We don't have him, but we kind of have him with the over-unders. Let's go. Wake Up Warchant presented by Vitamin Energy. VitaminEnergy.com. Promo code Warchant BOGO. Warchant BOGO. I'm in Dublin, everybody. So's Ira, so's Corey, so's Gene, Jeff, Tom. So come on out to the old storehouse in Temple Bar. Come hang out with us tonight from 6 to 9 o'clock. But shout out to our guys at Vitamin Energy, keeping me energized, keeping me going. Made it to the gym twice already this week, everybody. Get some. Shout out to our guy Paul. Met Paul out on Thursday night, last night. Said that he takes a little bit of the Vitamin Energy, doesn't make him crash, keeps him going throughout the days and the evenings when need be. So always good to meet somebody who listens to the show and also supports the program by supporting the people that support us. VitaminEnergy.com, promo code Warchant, BOGO. That is the promo code. All right, so today's show looks like this. I don't know what had to happen to Corey to get him on a plane to get over here, but he's here. That's all that matters, everybody. But we let him maybe take a little bit easy. So we have Ira Schofel coming out of the bullpen, throwing big heat. So I'm going to ask Ira a bunch of questions because he knows. He's out there with all of us, but then he knows people that know things. So he's able to glean things from them and then shares them with us, which is great. So we're going to have 20 minutes with Ira. I set a clock because it was late. It was like after midnight out here on Friday morning. And Ira's like, I'll do it. And I'm like, you're the man, dude. So we got that from Ira. And then Corey will be with us in spirit during over-unders. So he set the menu for the over-unders. You're going to pick them. You got to go to warchant.com. You got to be a member. Go to Tribal Council. Thread is pinned. And we're actually going to give out, I think I said $25 in the video. That's going to be later in the show. Sorry, wrong. It'll be $10. But hey, it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. And this show, while maybe not at full capacity, is better than nothing. So without further ado, let's go. Ira Schofel, let's talk Florida State football, friend. I'm not going to waste any time with this, everybody. I told Ira Schofel, I'm like, I need 20 minutes out of you, big dog. Can you give me 20 minutes? He's like, I can give you 20 minutes. So Ira Schofel's here, talking Noles, Wake Up Warchant. Corey's okay, everybody. He's going to be kind of involved later on in the show. So we'll get to that at another point. Ira, how are you, man? How are things going?
I'm great, man. I'm great. I think I'm feel comfortable saying I'm better than Corey Clark. Today, just for one day only, I'm doing better than Corey Clark.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. All right, so we're going to be out at practice later today as people listen to this. We'll get to speak to Coach Norvell after practice. Just want to kind of go over, we haven't heard from you here on the show here in such a long time, but I want to talk about quarterback real quick, I guess. So, you see people on the message boards talking about, we don't need DJ to be great. We just need him to be good. I feel like, you needed Jordan to be great last year to get to 13-0, at least the first half of the season, it felt like. Where's your stance on the expectations out of DJ, and can he fulfill, those expectations to get Florida State where they want to be?
I just think he's married to the receivers, and I know they've looked better lately, and we've documented that on the website that they've had a good week or so of practice. But I still think if you're in a situation where DJ has to win the game, that means he has to be throwing the ball to somebody. And I like Kyle Morlock, I like the running backs, I like Malik Benson. I'm still not sold on the rest of the wide receivers. So to me, Florida State's recipe to win is to not have to be in that situation, and that's to dominate on defense, control the ball with the running game, dominate in special teams, and then use the passing game as a weapon. But I just don't think it can be DJ has to go win games. If they're in that situation, because I don't think this team is built for that, with that receiving core, at least early in the year, I just think that would put them in a bad place. Now, later in the year, if Luane McCoy takes off and Jalen Brown takes off and Hakeem Williams takes off and Elijah Moore, all those young guys, I love those young guys. Even the young tight ends, Landon Thomas, Amari Williams, I just don't know early in the season if you can count on those guys. So to me, early in the year, I think it needs to not be DJ winning games, but maybe later in the year. Okay?
I don't want to be the negative guy here on the show. I don't think this is negative, but does that kind of render a little bit of the advantage that Florida State has on the offensive line a little bit moot because you feel like they're probably going to be able to protect and give them all sorts of time. But if you don't have receivers that can get open, then it doesn't really maybe matter as much. I mean, they're still going to be really crucial for the run blocking, but that kind of renders a little bit of their strength maybe not as important. Or is that just?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, again, I just think if you're running the ball well on first and second down, if you're running the ball in obvious running situations and you can run it effectively and you can get into 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3, well, yeah, man, now you throwing the ball is a lot easier. And if you start doing that, now they have to crowd the line, then you could start throwing the ball. I guess my thing is I'm not saying that they shouldn't throw the ball. I'm just saying that I feel like they do need to establish the run first just to kind of make things easier. Again, I think when you had Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, it didn't matter what they ran on defense. Those guys just throw their cheat codes. And if DJ had those guys, I think he could do that. I just don't, to me, these guys are going to need Mike Norvell to scheme them open, and he's going to need the running game to be effective, in my opinion.
Well, any takeaways from Jaylen Brown maybe emerging here in the last week? Obviously a good sign, but is that something you can hang your hat on, or just you hope, again, just lean on the run game, and maybe week 3, 4, 5, then a guy like that can kind of take off and then take over some responsibilities, I guess? Yeah,
honestly, I think the talent is there, no question. He was a guy, back when he transferred in, I was super excited. But I also, he's not – he's still not a grown man. He's a little bit slight of build, and you can be that and be a really good receiver.
So Rashad Green.
I was going to say there have been Kenny Shaw. There have been plenty of guys that can do it. So, but I just again, when you talk about like contested catches, playing through contact, that's going to be a challenge. But man, he's got elite speed, so I think he can make plays. And it sounds like the last couple of days of practice, I wasn't out there because we left early for Ireland, but. Sounds like he's been catching passes over the middle. I think Matt talked about that some in his observations. So if you can get him in crossing routes, maybe kind of get him where he's get a full head of steam. Yeah, man, he could run away from the defense. So I think he could be a weapon. I just think you got to find the right spots for him.
What do you take away from this? We keep hearing explosiveness, like the most explosive. I think Norvell said it to the reporters after practice. I think he said it according to one of our posters at the Tallahassee Quarterback Club earlier this week. Talks just about how this is the most explosive team he's had based on GPS data, the numbers and things like that. Is there anything to read between the lines when that's what like the coach is kind of harping on or kind of celebrating the most?
I don't know. It may be. It's going to be hard to talk up this team until people see them. Like last year's team, again, man, you bring in Keon, he'd already caught 50 balls in Michigan State, and Johnny and Trey had done it here, Jordan had done it here, so it was not easy to get people excited about this team. And I think anytime you're speaking in a public setting, you want to get people to, and I think he wants to breathe confidence into the team. So I think that it's something he can hang his hat on. Otherwise, what could he really say? These guys really can catch the ball. These guys really can, it is a data point that I think is true. And the way they track it, they do track the speeds and they track the volume of work and all that, but they do track explosive movements. And so how many movements and how explosive those movements are, they can track it, and I think it is better on this team. There's no doubt in my mind. That's why I've done some radio interviews since we've been out here, and I believe this team is athletically, it might be superior to last year's team.
Oh, Ira, really?
Athletically, in terms of like put them in gyms,
like in a combine. Put in a combine,
yeah. Okay. But whether or not they're as good as football players, that's what we have to see. Right now, I don't think they are as a team, but I think they're from an athletic, physical standpoint, they've got some guys that can really run and move weight. So it's a talented team. It's just, how do they play football?
Overrated, underrated, the impact, non-impact of Alex Atkins not being able to actually hands-on coach Saturday against Georgia Tech, do you think?
I think it's only an issue, and I really like Gabe Fertitta. I think he's a really sharp guy. I think he'll be an offensive line coach at a Power 5 school probably pretty soon. And he's a good asset for Florida State, and I think he's valuable and really smart. And I think he'll be fine. Like blue sky, he'll be fine. My concern is, the scenario you don't want to see if you're Florida State for this football game is Georgia Tech hits a couple plays early. Now DJ in this offense has to play behind, and you also don't have your offensive line coach. Like to where if again, the doomsday scenario, and I'm not saying they would definitely lose, but this is the hardest track. The hardest track they would have to travel to win this game would be getting down 10 or 14 early. DJ feeling like he has to throw to make big plays. I think Mike Norvell would be confident enough to stick with the running game and stick with his game plan. But, there's going to be pressure on DJ, especially if they get behind in his first start at Florida State. Man, I feel like you could go out to Oregon State. You're in witness protection, I mean, right?
No one knows what's going on in Corvallis. No.
So, but you're at Florida State. Game day's here, this game. And if they get behind, I could see him putting a little game pressure on himself. And then if Georgia Tech's doing some stuff to mess with the line, I agree 100%. You guys have been talking about it on the show. This is an offensive line with 1 million starts. They should be fine with all that. But you'd like to have your position coach there, So I think back in the glorious 2018 season when Florida State didn't have a receivers coach, I downplayed that, and you were ringing the alarms, and you turned out to be right. This concerns me if things go poorly. If they go fine, I think you're fine.
Well, you were also the first one to point out going to 21, like, hey, man, like, who are they going to throw the ball to? Like, yeah, it doesn't matter. You don't need receivers in 21. It's fine. They'll figure it all out. I just feel like it's his voice, man. Like, just Alex Atkins' voice, his presence there is calming. But I guess, to your point, the overall point that Corey's made on the show, and we've talked about, it's like, yeah, man, you guys have played enough football that, and Gabe Fertitta is a smart enough coach that, like, you guys should be able to kind of hunker down and
But how
figure
does he
things
handle it?
Yeah.
Does he get
a little
wound up
flaccid,
tight, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, he's coached he's been an analyst. He was an analyst at Louisville. He's been an analyst here. But I think the last time he was position coach was probably, he was the head coach at a high school, and he was, coordinator at a junior college. But, man, that's going to be a different scene. And so if things aren't going right and guys aren't, rat trapping, as Jimbo used to say, you just wonder, how. So, again, those are worst case scenarios. But if otherwise, I think they'll be fine.
You said his name, so have you seen these tweets about Jimbo Fisher being in Ireland?
In the house. His stepson goes to Maclay, and they're playing that game here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
all right.
so Jimbo,
people are like, he might be an off-field analyst, and I'm like, I don't think that's gonna happen.
And it's they flew him here commercial to for the
Job
surprise trip. No, I believe I think his stepson is with Maclay, and they're playing there's 3 high school games going on too.
Great. All right, so I'm going to ask you one question that's not negative, but we'll get a little positive here on the offense. What do you feel good about week 1? I know you're very on the nose, I think, when you talk about – let's start thinking about week 7, 8, 9, what this offense can look like. But when it comes to week 0 here, Saturday, what's the stuff that makes you feel good about this offense and confident about the chances for Florida State?
I just have a lot of confidence in Mike Norvell in that offensive line in the running game. But I just think, I think Norvell is going to – I'll be very surprised if he doesn't put DJ in a good situation, if he doesn't put those receivers and running backs in places where they can really excel. It's not to say he's 100%. It's not to say he doesn't call bad plays that blow up. Sometimes you just call the wrong play into the wrong defense. But in terms of coming up with a strategic plan to – kind of get DJ going, I think he thinks about all that stuff. I think there are some head coaches, I was telling somebody this earlier today that, one of the things in the Manning cast that Peyton and Eli will talk about is in certain situations, the head coach or the play caller needs to give the quarterback an easy throw. Like in certain, third and long, 4th and short.
Give him a layup.
Give him a layup. And you can't make it just be go make a play all the time, unless it's Aaron Rodgers. And so, I think Norvell takes that stuff into consideration. So I think he'll have a really good game plan to kind of give them, every opportunity to succeed early in this game. And then I just, I think the depth on the offensive line I think is huge. I mean, I'm super impressed by the offensive line. I mean, it's just it's not just the fact that you have the 5 starters, but it is the fact that you've got – when that second team offensive line's out there, you'd be fine with that group. And there's probably 1 or 2 other guys that you could sneak in there too. So those are the things to me. I think, and that's where I think Florida State wins this game ultimately is just that depth on the line of scrimmage.
Okay, so offensively, before we pivot to the defense, like if I could give you like a mulligan to where we've been talking about this team in a very positive light because there's a lot to like about this team, but if there's maybe like one thing, either a player or a position or just some sort of storyline where you might have said something positive about it, but you're like, hey, don't jump down my throat in case it doesn't go according to plan early on. What would that one thing to me have some cautious, I guess, optimism on or cautious regard?
Yeah, I don't know. I think
for me, to give you an example, mine was like Jeremiah Byers. Love this offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like left tackle to right tackle. I think when we see that depth chart, Jeremiah Byers is a guy I still think that maybe hasn't made a great stride since last year, and potentially maybe there could be some kind of weakness there that affects everybody else on the offensive line. And then if they don't look as great, then everybody's like, well, you guys have been talking about this offensive line, looking like the hogs, what's going on? So like that was my one thing, not to nitpick on the poor kid, but just the one thing to like, let's just maybe, realize there's some things that could possibly not work out intended perfectly.
I think for me it would be the young skill guys. Like I think I am enamored by Cam Davis and Mekhi Danzy, Jalen Brown, all those young receivers, even Cam Fryer, I like BJ Gibson. I love all of those young. Amari Williams at tight end.
Oh, Amari Williams, dude,
man,
that kid is.
So I've been talking those guys up, and I'm really excited about them. But I also know that, man, if they got put out there in this game, there's a chance something terrible could happen. Like they could just give the ball to the other team. They could just completely fall apart. And then people would be like, I thought you said this kid's great. Well, yeah, man, these kids, for where they are in their careers, they're, I think, much more advanced and much more talented than a lot of the skill guys we've seen here in the last several years. But they are still real freshmen. And so to me, that's why I go back to, again, if you can just get through these early games, I think those guys will come along. I just don't know how comfortable are you, if you're Mike Norvell, to throw Elijah Moore out there. Right. It's just, or Amari Williams or any of them.
We got to give a shout out to Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, everybody. CPTallybar.com, 2475 Appalachia Parkway. Love it. Love it. I'm in Dublin, as I've said multiple times, and it might be borderline obnoxious now, but I'm just saying that because if I was in Tallahassee, if I wasn't going to watch it from the peace and quiet of my own home, because listen, man, I just want to watch the game. I just want to watch the game. Like, no, I'll text with you. I'll jump in the group chat, and then we'll talk about a play or two. But I don't know, man. I don't like a lot of people around me yelling and screaming and getting rowdy. But I feel like I want it for the opener. And if you want the right ambiance to get you ready for the 2024 season and be surrounded by fellow Noles and you're in Tallahassee, go to Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. Happy hours throughout the day, all day Sunday. That's crazy, Bill. What are you doing, wild man? Check it out. Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, 2475 Appalachia Parkway, cptallybar.com, the website.
It has been a crazy week. Very crazy week. Traveling is crazy. Crazy traveling. So we were not able to do a proper Renegade Express mailbag show and have you folks generating discussions sparked by Cummins. So Corey and I were discussing this. We're like, well, how are we going to keep the franchise going? We got to get it going. People love it. And we're like, we're just going to, at some point this week, we'll knock out like a 10-minute segment where Corey and I will discuss the over-unders for the game. Well, he was flying out on Wednesday. I'm like, all right, let's do it on Wednesday before you leave. By the time we got a hold of each other, he was at the airport. Don't think it was a great time for him to hop on the phone and start knocking the stuff out. So through technology and just texting each other on the phone, I'm like, Corey, give me your over-unders. We're going to make that the generating discussion sparked by Cummins segment. And then we'll give away $25 in Garden and Gold gift codes to a subscriber who gets this the best. So first, as the camera is fired up, let's fire up the generator. And let's generate discussion. It's sparked by Cummins. These over-unders, though, they're sparked by your boy, Corey Clark, everybody. So, again, go to the Tribal Council. You got to be a subscriber of warchant.com to get involved. The link is there. It's pinned to the top. It's a Google form link. Click on the Google form link. Go there. All this menu, this buffet of picks, they're available. Pick them, win them, get a $25 gift card to Garnet and Gold. Without further ado, number one, Corey's picks. These are all Corey's picks, the 5, and then I threw one at the end. So Corey's got 8.5 over-under Jalen Lucas total touches. This will include kickoff returns. He didn't say punt returns, but we'll include punt returns as well. But 8.5 Jalen Lucas total touches. Probably going to go with the under. Me speaking. You do what you want. I'm just saying what I'm going to do just to fill some time. This is Corey's pick as well. 6.5 anti-Kirk Herbstreit signs at game day on Saturday. How are we going to audit this, Corey? I ask. He's like, we'll figure out a way. It's probably going to involve you folks letting us know how many that you spotted. So he's got 6.5 anti-Kirk Herbstreit signs that will be visible on College game day. Number 3, a little bit more conventional, Malik Benson receiving touchdown, 60.5. I should have gone back and looked and see how many games last year Florida State's leading receiver had more than 60 yards. Probably fairly regularly. Nonetheless, he's probably your number 1 receiver, 60.5, the over-under Corey set on receiving yards for Malik Benson. Number 4 should have been takeaways, not turnovers created. That's just it's too much. It's too much. It's a mouthful. Florida State defense, 1.5 takeaways. Will they turn over Georgia Tech more than once on Saturday? I think that's the ball game. If they get 2 turnovers, feels like that's pretty much going to be a wrap. Number 5 on the menu of picks from Corey Clark, DJ Uiagalelei, total touchdowns, 3.5. Big number. If you're a devout fan of the program, you heard last week probably me go through his box scores last year. I think there was only 3 games where DJ had more than 3 touchdowns. One of them was against Cal Davis, which I think is an FCS program. Probably take the under on this one. But hey, listen, it's the first game. Mike Norvell, speed, explosiveness, out the yin-yang. Let's go over everybody, right? I guess that's what Corey's trying to generate from you guys. All right, and then mine, Haynes King. Supposed to be a pretty dynamic quarterback. How dynamic against what we think is going to be a dominant defense? 269.5 over under total yards for Haynes King. We'll factor in sack yardage. We'll do that. We'll factor that in. So those are your 6 picks. We'll do a tiebreaker. Tiebreaker will be Florida State rushing yards total. Total rushing yards for Florida State, factoring in sack yardage as well, negative yards. So that'll be the tiebreaker. So there you go, everybody. Again, Jalen Lucas, total touches, 8.5. We'll include special teams on that. 6.5 Kirk Herbstreit signs that are negative towards him and his existence at game day visible on the broadcast. 60.5 receiving yards for Malik Benson over under. 1.5 Florida State takeaways for the defense. 3.5 total touchdowns for the quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei. Haynes King, 269.5 total yards. Sack yardage will be included. Tiebreaker, Florida State rushing yards, negative sack yardage also factored in. Boom, there you go. Go fill it all out. But first, before you go to warchant.com and hit the tribal council and hit the link to fill it out, go to Instagram and follow Cummins, everybody. This is like the most simple ask in the history of podcasting. People ask you to go buy crazy items. They ask you to subscribe to things. You should subscribe to warchant.com. We're just asking you to go click follow. Boom. Piece of cake. Shout out to Corey. Hopefully he's in Ireland right now. Last I heard, he's in England. Still a little bit, it's not quite there. Kind of close, but not quite there. And we'll see you guys Friday as you're listening to this. Hopefully we'll see you later tonight or at the old Storehouse in the Temple Bar District in Dublin, Ireland, everybody. How cool does that sound? If you're not in Dublin, it's okay. Just go to warchant.com. There's many more Florida State fans over there than there are in Dublin. There's a lot here, though. There's a lot. But there's so many folks at warchant.com. Go get involved in the conversation. Go fill out the over-unders. Go follow Cummins Lifestyle on Instagram. And more show coming up after this.
All right, so last week, Ira, somebody asked us on the mailbag about whether or not we were surprised that Florida State is now at this point where they have this fairly relatively dominant defense. And I was like, yeah, man, I was surprised, especially after the first few years, but just also, I don't know how Memphis, and I don't really know the caliber of play in the AAC, but just that really wasn't Memphis's MO. And Adam Fuller was there for a year. They really weren't locking, clamping people down, holding them under 20 points. How surprised are you that this defense has kind of reached this point of being dominant? I don't know how much of those last 3 games of last season are sticking in everybody's mind, but how close can this team be to what that team last year was when it came to playing Florida and playing Louisville and just absolutely being lights out seemingly?
Yeah, and that's where I'm talking about when I said earlier that from an athletic standpoint, from a height, weight, speed, agility, I really think this defense could be overall more talented than last year. But the difference is, that team you had so many dudes who were we're going to do whatever it took to win. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were all in. I might say they were dogs, Aslan. Those guys. I mean, like Jarian Jones and Renardo Green. They had invested so much in the program, and so. And then even, a guy like Fisk hadn't invested that much, but, that's just who he is.
Just such a mature dude. I mean,
exactly.
Just the head on the shoulders and everything's crazy.
He could have been anywhere. And the fact it was a good culture, I think it just meshed perfectly. But, Tatum Bethune and Caleb, I mean, just those guys they were going to lay it on the line to win those football games. What I don't know about this team yet is, will these guys lay it on the line like that? Marvin Jones Jr. to me is as impressive as any football player I've ever covered. I mean, at that height and weight to run like that. But what does he do? We always think back to that Jermaine Johnson play against Miami where he runs over the backside. Yeah. Like, is Marvin Jones Jr. that guy? He might be. We just don't see it, so we don't know. We don't see it because they don't really do that kind of stuff in practice. So those are the questions to me. So I think the defense has a chance to be awesome because of that. Because I just look at the personnel, man. Like, you across that board, that defensive line, coming off the bus, they're going to look like as good as anybody in the country. I mean, there's nobody that's going to look much better than Florida State's defensive line physically. I really love the secondary. We've watched them every day in practice just dominate. And it's not just because they're dominating not great receivers. They make plays on the ball that – or take tremendous athletic ability. So I believe in that secondary, and I think the linebackers are a lot better than people are going to expect. So I think defense should be really good, but I do want to reserve judgment because, again, like I think what made that defense so good last year and even the year before was just that they were very disciplined and really put themselves out there physically. And so, I'm still waiting to see on something because we haven't seen these guys tackle people to the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned linebackers. Are you confident, like a guy like Blake Nicholson and Justin Cryer, if they have to be in there on a crucial third down, like they'll be ready, they can produce, they can get to their spot, they can make the play?
Yeah, I think they can play. I think what you don't know is are they going to have mistakes? If they see it and read it. I have no doubt. I've seen Blake Nicholson athletically. I mean, he can make those plays. Cryer, I think, has got great instincts. I like Cam Riley a lot. Obviously, DJ Lundy's been around forever. And, there's a good nucleus of guys there. But what it's hard to tell, and again, like just based on what we see at practice, it's just hard to tell, are they getting their assignments right all the time? And that stuff, that doesn't get exposed as much in inside drill at practice. But it will get exposed in a game on Saturday. So, my concern in a game like this is, Haynes King is such a good runner, and then they've got another 1,000-yard running back, and they've got a veteran offensive line, and they've got an offensive coordinator that's going to, they're going to run some wrinkles and misdirection and some tricks, and so how disciplined are they? Cam Riley, to me, is a perfect example. If I'm Georgia Tech, I'm thinking this guy transferred in from Auburn where he lost his starting job. He's got 1 year left. He's going to make a bunch of big plays. I'm trying to bait that guy into mistakes, So that's the kind of stuff we don't know. Like, what kind of mistakes are they going to make?
Could this secondary be better than last year's secondary?
I think it can, man. It's crazy to say that. And I said that to somebody on the staff, and they were like, you realize that, those guys were all second-round picks, and I was like, yeah, man, I think – Azaria Thomas's ceiling is so much higher than Renardo's. And I think, now Nickel Jarian was probably better than anybody they're going to have this year. That's one where they won't be. But I think Fentrell's going to be better than he was. We haven't really written about this, but Patrick Surtain, when he talked about him a couple weeks ago, he said, just the idea that at Virginia they played so much off man.
Bell coverage.
Yeah. And at Florida State, they are playing press man all the time, 85% of the time.
I love how he said that. I'm sure what Adam Fuller thought about that when he laid out the percentages.
But yeah, so now he's much more comfortable in that, and we've seen it. Like in the spring, he looked better, and he looks better in this fall. So yeah, I think and Shaheem's going to be better than he was a year ago. So yeah, I think overall they will. Akeem Dent's the one you're probably taking another little step back. But I don't think it's a huge step back. So I think it could be.
All right, what's your mulligan on defense where you're thinking about things and you've been saying positive things? You're like, well, just if it doesn't go perfectly, don't come at me. Don't at me. Maybe that should be the segment. Don't at me with Aslan.
Don't at me.
Mine was Earl Little. I feel like everybody's like, Earl Little's like set it and forget it. He's from Alabama. Right. Him and Surtain, we got the band back together. We're good there. And it's like, well, let's just.
I was probably in that camp. Yeah. I was just super excited about his athletic ability. Yeah, I would if I would say probably.
You don't have to pick one if you feel pretty good about
I'm
it.
not against it.
Give a little bit of an out. Give some wiggle.
I don't want to say the same thing I said earlier, but I think it's just that
young guys.
That point of just the idea of, again, like defense in man, back when you were in school. I mean, those defenses were the poster childs for it. They had all these first round picks, but they weren't great on defense a lot of times because like they would just get on discipline and guys are just trying to make plays and rack up stats. I'm not saying that's what this team is or this defense is. We just don't know, until we see him do it. And that's probably one of those things where we just make up things in our head to worry about. But I just feel like that's a thing that could be, a concern. Is that the alarm?
That was 20 minutes. That was 20 minutes of Irish O'Fell. We're recording this super late in Dublin, everybody. Ira, thanks for taking time out. We'll Warchant wrap, I imagine, with you and Corey after we talk to Coach later this morning.
We'll see if the other half shows up. We'll see. It might be a Warchant wrap with Aslan and Ira.
Ira's the man. Thanks, Ira.
Thanks, man.
All right, and that is a wrap. Thanks again to Ira for doing this. Shout out to Corey for making it on a jet airplane and crossing not only the Irish Sea, but also the Atlantic Ocean to get here to cover a football game for you folks. Again, we'll talk to Norvell around, 1 o'clock, 1:30 over here, so that's going to be like 8 a.m. your time on a Friday. So check out warchant.com for interviews. There's not going to be any observations. We're only going to be able to watch them stretch and then one individual period of a walkthrough. So the only thing that we could really observe and share that would be of value would be injuries, but we're not allowed to talk about injuries. So if you're in Dublin, shout out. That's awesome. Come out to the old storehouse and hang out with Jeff Cameron and Tom Lang and Gene Williams and Irish O'Fell and Corey Clark and myself. And let's do the thing. I think I went through everything we need to get through, so that's awesome. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you made it this far, I'd ask you to hit the thumbs up, 5-star rating review, but just thanks for being here and listening and downloading today. I'm not going to ask you to do anything else, but have a great weekend. And next time we talk to you, hopefully the Noles are 1-0. For Ira and Corey, I'm Aslan. Thanks for listening to Wake Up Warchant, presented by Vitamin Energy.